Welcome to the Vibrant Living Network. Have you ever wondered what is possible beyond possible? What is the thing you've been wondering and inquiring about? Are you just feeling stuck and don't know why? Are you thinking or are you seeing? Seeing allows us to expand and have this other experience. We want to invite you for that wake-up call. We want to invite your spirit, your soul, so to be more alive, more connected. Glenn Brooks has been a life coach for over 33 years, author of Divorced to Patterns, Not Each Other, an explorer of what is possible. He has worked with people all around the world. Join us for a wake-up conversation, a dialogue with you. We will have some of the most interesting contributors. We will be talking to some of the most interesting people and have some of the most resourceful teachers, wisdom-filled people from around the world join us. Share your voice, ask the questions, become free of the known into a new world of possibility. We are going to talk about all the things you wonder about: how to live, how to heal, how to connect, how to love, how to be seen. Your life is precious. Enjoy it.
Thank you. It's good being with you today here on the Vibrant Living Network. The remarkable. What is this thing called the remarkable? I was reflecting on it as I spoke to John Adago and Lisa LaRose. The remarkable. How can we make ourselves more receptive to it? How can we discover the wisdom of the remarkable? And again, what is the remarkable? You know, when I gave a talk one time in Washington, and I said to people, I said, you know, how many of us really distinguish or realize that our introduction to life is often what I call terminal normality. And at the same time, the remarkable is all around us. I went to a talk one time with this doctor, and he was in his 80s. He looked so young and so vibrant. And I went to see him at his office. He'd been in that office 60 years. And I opened the door, and it was an old building, and the bell rang, and he was doing these breathing exercises in his office, and he threw a quarter towards me. And I remember standing. It was the experience of the remarkable. He threw the quarter, and in the back of the quarter, there was a picture of this woman. Her name was Doris Baum. That was his wife. And there was a statue of his wife in front of the Plaza Hotel. And I was standing with him, and I felt something had changed, something had shifted. And I started to practice more and more and become aware that the remarkable lives. It's often not talked about. It's often sensed in the silence. And it often is sensed when we're in recognition of it. And what I find is the more we recognize it, the more it comes alive in our lives. So, by the way, I wanted to mention that John Adago is going to be writing for the July issue of OMS Time magazine. And you'll learn more about John on a personal level and his facilitation. Lisa, you've written up a beautiful quote for today's show. And today's show is really about how do we enter the remarkable as a way of life? And how does that connect us with wisdom, immediate wisdom? How do you connect with immediate wisdom when you need it? That's what we're going to kind of dive in today, and open the phone lines. And how do we break this, if you will, this barrier, or go beyond the veil that allows us access to the remarkable and the wisdom of the remarkable? Lisa, welcome. Good hearing your voice. Good being with you.
Thank you, and happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, you and John.
Yeah, and welcome, John. Welcome, John. It's always such a delight. So,
yes.
From John's book, Ancient Wisdom Can Enrich Your Life Today, I was, it's so interesting sometimes how you're led to different things, and you Glenn, started talking about wisdom, and within John's book, I found the following. It says, "What is forgotten is that each soul, like each snowflake, is unique. We need company along the way, but each must be allowed the freedom to find his or own way back to the center. And so, along the way, the wise meet all with respect and love." And I think, in reading that and in reading John's book, I'm reminded that, each day we don't know the circumstances of the people that we meet. They could have had stubbed their toe before they saw us and have a grimace on their face, and we meet them and we judge them on that grimace, or they might have gotten a phone call that was just so uplifting, and then they radiate with joy, and I sometimes when you get up in the morning and you do your morning routine and you get involved in whatever it is that we get involved in, and then you see different things on social media where people stand in sort of in judgment of what people do on a daily basis. They post a photo of themselves, not really thinking about what it is that they do. But I think what in John's book and what he tries to bring forth is that we all have the ability to go beyond our projections and our perceptions, and to really let go and to find a place where there's compassion and empathy and love, and really awaken to another wisdom, and to see beyond that. So with that, John, I welcome you, and I'm excited to see what you have to share, and what your thoughts on when you meet somebody, and how you actually have created a practice of going beyond just the perceptions and really seeing each people and meeting them with respect and love.
Yes.
Welcome, John.
Thank you. When we speak about the remarkable, what we're speaking about is those moments when we go to a little bit of a deeper place within ourselves. We spend most of the hours of the day taking care of mundane things, superficial things, picking up the mail and throwing out the garbage and making the bed and attending to our customers. And all of that is necessary and an important part of living an orderly life. But then there are moments when we penetrate to a deeper place within ourselves, a more profound place, a quieter place, if it could be said that way. We actually, for a moment, fall still, allow the mind's activities and the constant movement of emotions to subside, and actually have a sense of who and what I am. From this place, we look out and see the world around us in a different perspective, because we consider the people and circumstances around us. In our ordinary state of mind, really we walk around all day with the perspective that I am the center of the creation and the most important part of it. Everything revolves around me. When I meet a situation or a person, my first reaction is, well, how will this further the pursuit of my desires or avoid the things I don't want to avoid? What's in it for me, so to speak? But a more mature reaction is to meet that person or situation, and what comes to mind is, what is my duty in this situation? What is the appropriate role that I'm to play to be of most use to myself and to others? Ouspensky wrote a book titled In Search of the Miraculous, and what he meant by the miraculous was this penetration a little bit below the normal concerns of the day, to a deeper, more profound place. Now, the quote that you read, Lisa, about each person finding his own way to truth, his own way to the aim and purpose of his life, it has to be his own way, because really he's going to find that route within himself. By way of analogy, if you think of all men and women, past, present, and future, standing on this huge globe called Earth, and they want to penetrate to the center. Well, each person has a slightly different starting point, or perhaps an even opposite starting point. the center is the same, but the path is unique. And as we approach the center, the paths merge into one, because there is, in fact, one truth. There is, in fact, universal laws that govern the creation and govern our lives. But each person must be allowed the freedom to follow that truth. One may be Christian, another Jew, another secular. One may value family. One value as the highest thing his own creative self-expression. Joseph Campbell used to say, follow your love. And each man and woman's love, in a way, is unique. And so this is why we have to acknowledge this. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's funny you should mention Campbell. Campbell was he was a tremendous influencer. He went to he went to school out of in Westchester. You know, Campbell was a paradox for me. So Campbell was one of the people. They had, I think it was a 15 or 14 part series they ran on public television.
Yes.
And it's funny you're saying follow your love. I always heard him quoted as follow your bliss. That's interesting. Did he say follow your love or interchangeable with follow your bliss?
I think
he
said it interchangeably, yes.
Okay, all right. So I guess in my
bliss is, that which makes you happy, but what makes you happy is what you love.
Yeah. You know, the thing in my life, I had this experience maybe 8 years ago where I had this, I call it a relational awakening, and I really looked at everything in my life differently after that awakening. And during this awakening, by the way, I started to play with this term soul. I used to say soul seeing. I started to see things at night and I started to get into a state where I could see things and interpret things differently. And so Joseph Campbell, it was very subtle, but I felt what he was missing, and I want to ask you this. I felt he was missing this deeper relational thing. So what we had happen, let's say the 80s into the 90s, when he was really, really hot, I felt he was one of the people that tipped a lot of people into what I would call a self-emergent practice, which I didn't really make this distinction before. And the distinction would be that follow your bliss. So a lot of people took off and did different things for their bliss, but ignored, or it kind of hurt their relationships. So I guess in my own awakening, in my journey, distinguishing relational bliss between individualistic bliss became a significant turning point. And so by the way, there was a cover article in the New York Times. There was some pastors and things discussing this distinction about like our personal path and where that intertwines with our relational path. And I was curious. Now, many times you've shared beautiful stories about your wife and your life, and I get that you have this. So what I want to ask you about in your experience, and for people people who want to move in this path, like I teach relational meditation as an example, and I'm curious in your heart and in your experience, because I know a lot of people want to discover from you because you've been practicing a while. So do you see what I'm saying about the distinction between, let's say the 1980s, there was a certain time when the word personal transformation became very hot. And to this day, personal transformation and personal empowerment. Now, to me, these are barriers. I don't see them as that useful. I think on a progression, they contributed to people. But now I see more than ever, people need this relational component to let this deepen, and by the way, to change each other's brain for true awareness and enlightenment. I love your comments.
And that's very clear. I think what impressed people about Joseph Campbell was that he radiated love. Mm-hmm. He was just a beautiful human being. When we speak about personal transformation, it's the wrong direction because the emphasis is on me and what I want and what I need. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The way to fulfillment is the way of love. We begin to look out and see how it is that we can be of most use to the people and circumstances around us. What we apply our intelligence and our skills to is nurturing the finest and highest parts of the people that we know. In this act of love, in a sense, we sacrifice ourselves. because my needs and my desires are not in the equation. What's determining my words and my actions is the needs of everything around me. Now, the beauty of all this is that when one begins to walk this path, he finds that the creation gives back to him in kind. That, in fact, as he acts toward his beloved in this way to care for her or him, he or she will find that that will evoke the same quality of love and response. And so all needs are met. But they're met by us taking care of everything else and having the faith that, in fact, our needs will be met. There's a beautiful story that comes to mind about a group of people at a banquet. Mm-hmm. And the table is full, a very richly set table. But the guests at the dinner are wearing jackets with bamboo sleeves that keep their arms straight, so they can't bend them and feed themselves. And so people at the banquet are starving. That's a description of hell. The next scene is the same scene, except the guests are feeding each other. And so all are satisfied and all enjoy the feast. Mm. This is a description of heaven. Mm. Mm. The transformation you speak of is the shifting the attention from taking care of me to taking care of everyone and everything around me that I see and know.
That's wonderful. You know, John, as you're speaking, there we go.
There we go. There we go. There we keep going. There we go. Hey, listening to the Vibrant Living Network. Is here, Lisa. We'll come back with Lisa in a moment. And the Vibrant Living Network. So, the remarkable. Listening to it, recognizing it. Stay with us with John Hidalgo and you when we continue. Your life's precious. Enjoy it. I'm Glenn Brooks.
The Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM.
Namaste, friends. This is Deva Pramala Miten. And we want to let you know that we will be in America and Canada this May. We'll be coming with our Wings of Mantra World Tour, coming up the West Coast to Boulder, Santa Fe, Sedona, Scottsdale, Santa Barbara, LA, Marin, Santa Cruz, San Jose, Escondido, Edmonds, and up to Canada to Victoria and Vancouver. You can find details on our website, devapramalmiten.com. Hope to see you there. Lots of love. Namaste.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
I'm Kathy Williams, host of Sexy Mom Abundant Life radio show on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. On the show, we explore living abundantly in every area of your life. Ways to let go of limiting patterns and beliefs and to step into the flow of creativity and possibility, knowing you are supported by the universe.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything.
I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor.
If making my detox public is going to help somebody, I'm all for it. So I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth. A message from Truth, the Ad Council, and ONDCP.
You're listening to the Vibrant Living Network. I'm Glenn Brooks, along with Lisa LaRose, John Hidalgo, and you. Lisa, you were going to say something.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories, John, that you shared was when you were in the car with your grandson, and I believe it was your wife, and I'm not sure who else was in the car, and people were discussing, and I apologize, I don't remember all of the details, but there was quite a discussion going on about which was the correct path, and your grandson spoke up and said, "Let's ask Grandpa. He's the wisest person in the car." And and as you were sharing that story about feeding
to
each
which
other,
my wife and daughter took issue, but.
and as you were talking about that, I thought about the fun that they do with this carpool karaoke, and I think that it would be sort of kind of the same. It would be kind of a fun exercise to do. That sometimes people feel that they can't bridge the gap between grandparent to grandchild. They can't really connect, and when your grandson made that comment, in every way we get fed, and I just couldn't help but think about that. But then as my brain sometimes works, I was thinking about, well, what would that song look like? What would that wisdom be like? How sometimes people think of this as so far away, so unapproachable. So if we were in a car with you, and Glenn and I were there, and your grandson were there, what carpool wisdom would you feel would be worthwhile sharing with us today?
Well, what tends to happen on a car ride is someone plugs in his earphones, another person listens to the radio, another one gets lost in his own thoughts, and there are 5 people in the car, and they're all alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the first step is to come out, put the attention out, acknowledge the other people around you,
mm-hmm.
and see what it is that perhaps you could say or do that would be of benefit to them. And the way we know that is by listening. In a conversation, the community is measured so much by what is said, but by what is heard. Listening today is a very rare commodity. We pay therapists and consultants large fees to simply listen to us. To fall still, let your own thoughts and feelings subside, and listen to another with your full attention is one of the highest forms of love. Mm-hmm. And that quality of attention is something that everyone needs as much as they need air and water.
I'm sure that's what your grandson feels like when he's in your presence. I'm sure that he feels that he's heard, and that means a lot to some. How old is he again?
Well, now he's 12, but I started telling him stories when he was 4. And in fact, I have a book coming soon called Grandparents' Tales, which are stories that evolved out of stories that I was telling him and his brother, my 2 grandsons at the time, because I was looking for stories that had some substance. And there's plenty of stories in children's literature about that, titillate a child in a particular way, or tell a cute story about a truck, but what seems to be lacking is stories that convey meaningful values, that convey depth, that open a child's mind and heart to the beauty and wonder of everything around him. Mm-hmm. And this is a form of love. I'm not telling the story to the child so that he will like me more, or because I like having him listening to me. I'm telling the story to the child because I'm attempting to nurture his finer his highest intelligence. Feed him in a way that perhaps he's not being fed by the other impulses around him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like, really, it makes, I think about different places in my own life and in my own day where, you need to take off those headphones and really listen. And I think you're right, and I'm sure, Glenn, that you can, having children of your own, in the communications where you want to be heard, and, how you see that in a loving relationship as well.
And it's hard work in a way. It's full of joy, but it's quite an art to learn how to love another human being, or to raise a child, or love a grandchild. And a great deal of that art and learning what to do and say comes from actually listening and being aware of the needs of others. That's your teacher. That's your cue.
Mm-hmm.
One of the upcoming things we're going to be doing, as you listen to the Vibrant Living Network, I know what I want to share. I want to share with you this last week. I had a conversation with one of my mentors. You'll be meeting him soon. His name is Eric Morris. He's one of those people. I had a remarkable moment with Eric. I called Eric 20 years ago. I consider Eric, along with Jack Nicholson and Johnny Depp, I think he's extraordinary at helping people really fully develop as an actor, or develop them as fully experiential. To develop your instrument so it could really embody an actor needs to get out of the way of acting. It's a funny thing. He wrote a book called No More Acting, Please. And when I saw his book, I called him up because I realized acting gets in the way. And I called him up when he was in L.A., Eric, and he said, Glenn, here's my cell phone and my home phone. He goes, we're now family members, 20 years ago. And then I sent my daughter to meet him. But he said to me something yesterday. He's 87. He's going to be 88. He said to me yesterday, he said, he had an insight 6 years ago that changed everything for him. And he wrote a new book, and I want to introduce him to John and you, Lisa. And it's called A Second Chance at Life. And this is about that a lot of times we think our chances we've lost our chances. Like we think, well, this is the way life is. And we've kind of lost touch with the remarkable. Now, the thing that happened with me in my journey was someone of the greatest significance in my life, my wife, Donna. Something happened in our relationship that I caused what I call a relational tsunami. And it put me in touch with the love and appreciation I had for her I didn't even know I had. And also put me in touch with this energy of heartbreak, which I didn't know I didn't know what heartbreak was. And so I had to discover so many things at once. So in our life, sometimes something happens and it's sort of like it breaks it sort of breaks something open you didn't expect. And my personal identity was lost, right? It was lost because my identity was this one thing in my life, and my one thing is really I wanted to develop this relationship and discover this depth of love. Now, what happened for about 17 days in a row, when I went to bed at night, and I started to see something I couldn't see in the daylight hours. And I started to breathe in places in my body I didn't know I could breathe into. Now, with the year before this, I was in such blockage or devastation. I couldn't really notice the colors and wonders of the remarkable. But things started to shift. I started to see people differently. And it took another year, and I kept having these soul scenes. But 17 days, I started to realize I wanted to make a film. And I had Eric. Eric, when he gave me his phone number 20 years ago, I was able to call him So one of the things they call that, by the way, they call that a sangha. And of course, I'm going to have to ask John his interpretation of a sangha. My interpretation of a sangha is we have people that really care about our spirit and being at a level that's way beyond the material, and yet they'll back us at every level. So very early in my life, I was very interested in sangha. I'm very interested in who are the people that see you beyond how you see yourself and bring that out of you. So I'm going to be I want to invite you guys and let you guys know. I'm going to talk about sangha in a moment. And the remarkable. So what's the relationship between sangha and spiritual community and the remarkable? This is a profound relationship. We're going to be holding cast calls. Yeah. Go ahead.
The word in Sanskrit is tatsanga.
Okay.
And sangha means company, and sat is many meanings, but among them is good. So what we're speaking about is good company. And what's being spoken about is really if there's going to be spiritual work done, transformation, a moving from the coarser to the fine, a moving for an appreciation of the eternal as opposed to just the transient, to the essential as opposed to the superficial. All those things, all that movement requires good company. It requires a group of people, or at least some friends, that are sharing the same interests as you are, perhaps reading the same books, discussing the same philosophy, practicing the same exercises of meditation or contemplation or whatever the spiritual practices are, so that they can come together from time to time to share their experiences, report back, as it were.
Yes.
Because when we talk about walking a spiritual path, we're really talking about a scientific approach. We don't want to get lost in imagination. We want to be in a scientific process of observation and then confirmation by exchanging those observations with others, with other people that are performing the same experiments in spiritual growth. To have a group or a school of people coming under higher knowledge and working in a sense together, I mean, the work is very much an individual work, but it's greatly sped up by a group and by a teacher. Like anything else you want to learn. If you want to learn a musical instrument or how to do a particular art or craft or even a professional skill, your progress is going to be greatly accelerated by the presence of a teacher and other students who are making the same efforts to master this art. So too with spirituality. So too with transformation.
We did a show about 10 weeks ago on the relational dark night of the soul. Because a lot of times people break up and depart from each other during a dark night of the soul moments. And I realize a lot of times they lose the most powerful, wondrous doorway in their relationship to what they would call as the dark night of the soul. Well, the relational dark night of the soul is when we use that as a relational opportunity. Now, in my life, when this happened, I call it a relational tsunami, these kind of hidden blessings occurred in my life, things I didn't expect. I didn't know how to access them. But I met very unusual people during this 3-year period. So I met a couple that were kahunas, and they told me they would just assist me. Now, I want to say these are nonlinear moments. These people that offered to assist me, I sort of met them because I was interested in learning about their work. But when I heard my voice, there was probably 9 different people who told me they would assist me. This kahuna couple told me that this happens with couples all the time. They get energy deregulation. It's an energy level thing. They never talked about it as a linear thing or something that had to do with your childhood. They talk about energy regulation. So they were very instrumental, but there was a marriage therapist, and she said to me one day, John and Lisa, she said, Glenn, she goes, I could tap into Donna's spirit. And she goes, in fact, I want to do sessions with you where I could actually be Donna. So I realized these things happen, and you could say they helped me transition a different state of being that I didn't have before. Because all I could really identify with for a long time was the devastation of the most wondrous person in my life. And so I needed I needed a Sangha or people around me, and the generosity of these people was so deep. I mean, I remember one of the first women that I met told me I could work with her 3 times a day. She said, "You're going to need a transitionary period," and she did that for like 2 months. So I just want to say that part of what the challenge, I think, in our culture, I think our biggest cultural challenge is fear, isolation, and overwhelm. And that's why I'm excited about the upcoming retreat with John Adago. Because when we come together in a Sangha, and my Sangha was one where I reached the people that I didn't know. I didn't know these people, but we became family members. They gave me their codes, how to get into their lives, and they welcomed my call. I ran into great paradox with one of these people. I'll share the great paradox. John, I want you to comment. Lisa, I want you to ponder this one. I met a man in L.A. because he said to me, he said, "You're going through so much." He goes, "Call me day or night. Please, call me day or night." And I remember I called him 3 a.m. East Coast time. And I remember the first thing he said to me was, he says, "Thank you, Glenn. I'm so happy you took me up on my offer." And I don't know exactly what he said to me that night, but I remember feeling a sense of just a tremendous release, a tremendous sense of that I could begin again. And that stuck with me. And this man, I'm going to call him Max. He went on to write a book. Now, I want you guys to listen to the story. So about 6 months later, I met a psychologist who put a whole course together on anxiety. He wrote a book. And he goes, "Yeah, I wrote this book." And he goes, "I met this guy, Max, the man that had totally influenced my life." So I want you to comment on this, John, because we run into paradox and challenge and stuff that stretches our minds. I knew in my heart, by the way, I felt in my heart that Max that night had really opened up another doorway. He came in and he said a few things to me that night at 3 a.m. that changed my life for the better. And this was the beginning of me developing another whole level of relational awareness. It was the beginning of me I learned how to cry during this time. I felt people at a very different level. I started to write a book that people have, it's called Divorce the Patterns on Each Other. But it came in a way that was beyond my surface mind. Now, this guy that was putting the course together on anxiety, he was writing a book, and he told me he had lunch with Max, the author that had really made a profound difference in my life. And the sincerity level I experienced, it was very deep. He told me he had lunch with Max, and during the lunch, Max looked at his manuscript, took it to the restroom, climbed out the window, and made a copy of it at the print shop. He told me that Max basically stole his book. And I had a drop in my heart. At least I want you to tune into this too. In my heart and my experience with Max, it was a blessing. I really felt he was generous. And I had to think to myself, well, that's interesting, because some people will tell stories and say, well, this one does have an integrity, or, they cast, in the Kabbalah, by the way, killing someone is not a physical act. It's actually killing their reputation. It's not physically killing them. Interesting. So I had to examine my heart and say, well, who's Max to me? I want to get into that. We want to come back. I want to talk about our Sangha and our purpose in the remarkable is to go past opinions, judgments, go past our thinking style so we can receive people deeper. We'll continue with John Adago, East Meets West, and Lisa LaRosa. One moment, I'm Glenn Brooks, and your life is precious. Even right this moment, moment to moment to moment. Stay with us. Thank you.
Feed your soul with Waves of Consciousness on Om Times Radio.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, Why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Glenn Brooks for the Vibrant Living Network, talking about paradox, things that really challenge us. I want to give a practice. I want to see if John and Lisa likes the practice that I'm sharing. So this is a relational practice. This is a relational meditation. I want you to pick someone that you might be disturbed with or have an upset with. And for the next 5 days, I want you to put your hand on your heart, and I want you to become aware of you and them. Just become aware. I want you to, by the way, I want you to feel the physical heart. Put your hand on your physical heart and become aware of them and you. And exhale 3 times. When we exhale 3 times, we open up another space that resets our mind. And the seat of a lot of intelligence is actually in our heart. So I want you to, if you had an upset with someone or it comes up, we learn sometimes, what some people call forgiveness is a solo art. But when you practice it as a relational thing and you exhale and feel your heart, feel your heart. Feel, if you will, feel your heart and their heart. So you could feel it in your physical body. And see them anew. See you anew and them anew. John, I wanted to get your comment about dealing with, sometimes with, what I found in my life, some people that other people don't like or have issues with, I find they're amazing. And other times, it's almost like other people want to convince you. And I read around community, even with people who are very well respected, a lot of times there's, I guess what I want to ask you is, what about dealing with the challenge we have with personalities? Lisa, I think, mentioned thinking styles. I think the greatest source of prejudice is sort of this almost encouragement to dehumanize people. So one of the things in my Divorce to Patterns I Show is to really go from dehumanizing to really to beloving. And I want to get your take. Well, my little story when Max helped me so much and assisted me, it seemed like he might have stolen this guy's manuscript, but in my heart, his sincerity is real. Paradox.
It's a story with a lot of contradictions.
Absolutely. There's a lot of contradictions in the story. That's why I'm asking you.
There are a lot of contradictions in our life. There are a lot of contradictions in our life. And it's because, for the most part, we're really not very clear about what we want, about what our aim is, about what we think will lead us to fulfillment and happiness. I mean, it's almost as if we're kind of shooting arrows around randomly into the sky and kind of hoping somebody's going to yell out bullseye. It's not a very efficient way to go about it. So the first thing that helps to do is to begin to contemplate and meditate a bit and just ponder about what is it that I really think will fulfill me now. And then formulate an aim for this week or this month or this period of my life. Mm-hmm. An aim is a very powerful tool because once I have an aim, now I can distinguish right from wrong, better from worse. And my movements begin to move in a spiral as opposed to a repeating circle. We begin to see some ascendance, a deeper appreciation. Gurdjieff had the phrase, your level of being seeks your life. And what he meant was that as your understanding, as your work on yourself refines your nature, you begin to attract different people and different events. And they reflect the growth that's taking place in the inner part of yourself. But growth doesn't happen automatically or mechanically. Spiritual development does not result from the just normal, everyday interactions of the life. We pursue our careers and we pursue our interests and we satisfy our desires, but that doesn't necessarily result in spiritual development. It requires, first, the formulation of an aim. Second, finding positive influences that will assist that development. You spoke previously of good company, the company of the good.
Yes.
Once we decide that we're interested in this transformation, well, then perhaps we'll find that the company of people who don't share that interest isn't particularly useful. There's just so much spiritual development that can take place in a bar. You're going to find yourself moving toward different books, different experiences, different places to take your vacation, different ways in which you begin to spend your, quote, spare time, or time that's not involved, that's compelled just by, fulfilling your necessities and your obligations. So your level of being seeks your life. And as you pointed out, you met when you had a need, and when there was a desire for a change, a transformation, you met people that were able to assist you with that.
Yes. Yeah. Very beautifully. And I just want to say to people, ask. I guess at the time, and I've noticed this in different points in my life, that it's the times I've asked, it's been, it's both humbling and so beautiful to have people respond. I once was in a group. It was a spiritual group. And I remember I was in the middle of a very tough kind of anxiety period. And I really felt I was going to die. It was very intense. And the facilitator asked how many other people felt that they were going to make impending death. And almost like it was like if there was 29 people, like maybe 22 people had felt that. But when everyone went around, it kind of opened the room transparency and the experience of appreciation that we were there was so deep and so different than a social gathering. It really had a very different quality. It was almost like a presence gathering. And it really, it impacted me to feel like, well, I'm not alone. As a matter of fact, there's this sea that we're sharing this thing. And even though the veil of separateness is it could appear to be so strong. Similarly to even in some spiritual associations, sometimes when people have gotten kicked out. This is a great Gurdjieff story. It's my favorite Gurdjieff story. I'm not an expert in Gurdjieff stories at all, but this particular story, the way I heard it, John and Lisa, has always moved my soul, because there's so many people I know that are in spiritual groups or they're in groups. Or Ken Wilber says that the weakest domain, and when he maps all his consciousness maps, the weakest domain is the relational domain. That's the place that everyone aspiring to become more conscious is the weakest in. So this story, John, I got to summon another part of myself, because I know you know Gurdjieff so well. This particular story, when Gurdjieff had a community of people, as he traveled with his teachings and taught his physical practices and his consciousness practices, he would leave the community for months at a time and travel on the train. And, of course, when Gurdjieff left, he was such a big presence and such a powerful teacher. There were some people in the community that said, hey, Gurdjieff left. Now we got to do the right thing. We got to do the right thing. We got to kick this member out of the group. He's hurting us. He's getting in the way of our evolving as a group. And I realized when I read this story, I thought to myself, getting back to my original reference to the Kabbalah, that to kill one's reputation, be careful what you say about other people. Be conscious. Don't slander people. So the whole group was really about it. They really decided to kick this guy out of the community. And what I heard was, what I read, John and Lisa, was that when Gurdjieff came back, they almost the 3 or 4 people that went to help him, gather his belongings from the train and his bags, they were like, hey, we did this thing. And it sounded like they were anticipating Gurdjieff to say, well, it's about time, or it was a good thing you kicked John out or whatever. Like, he was quite a psychic pollutant. And in these days where you do separations and divorcing and character assassination, and something we just live with. And Gurdjieff says no. And he goes, drop my bags and go find John. He's saving and energizing the community. What you did is an abomination. And I read that, and I realized I'd been in so many groups where people sell each other out. And I realized, wow, it struck me at such a deep level. John, what was your interpretation of the story where Gurdjieff says to these people, go get this guy who you despise, who you consider to be a psychic invader? He's not. He's rewarding this community by being with us. Go get him. Welcome him back.
Yeah, well, the story is a little bit different from that.
I knew you were going to say that.
It took place during.
What's your? I know he's not, but I knew John was going to say this. That was how I heard the story and what it meant to my heart. Tell me. Go ahead, John.
It was close.
Oh, it was close. That's good to know. That's good to know.
Gurdjieff established an institute in France.
Okay.
And where people would come. And they would come together for maybe 100 people would gather for a weekend, and they would be involved there for 3 days or a week, working under his guidance and taking care of the chores to upkeep the property, but they were also doing movements and hearing talks and practicing different exercises. They had people from different countries, different nationalities, different social classes. Really, the only thing they had in common was this desire to grow spiritually. And so there was some natural frictions that occurred. And at one point, a group of 4 Frenchmen went to Gurdjieff and said, there's a really obnoxious Russian. And his behavior was really disturbing us. And can't you get rid of him? And Gurdjieff's answer was, well, yes, if I could get rid of him, but then I'd have to find somebody else to disturb you. So the point of this work is not to make ourselves comfortable. The point of this work is to create conditions that facilitate a change. That we begin to free ourselves from the habits and the mechanical things we say and do, and that are not particularly of use to ourselves or anybody else. We have lots of habits, and one of the effects of working with a group of people is you have these normal frictions, and you come up against yourself. What annoyed these people was not so much the Russian as their reaction to the Russian.
Yes.
And that change was part of the work. Because my well-being is not dependent on anybody's reaction or really on any circumstance. I am. The wise say, I am pure, perfect, and complete. I lack nothing. Satchitananda, I am consciousness and knowledge and happiness. It's who and what I am. But it's only mine when I remember myself. And when I'm aware of myself, when I am centered in this quiet place within myself, even in the midst of activity, I can be centered in a quiet place within myself, then whatever occurs does not affect my sense of well-being or happiness. Now, in practice, we often forget who and what I am. We get lost in the movements. We get lost pursuing this desire or that, or running from this activity or that, or running to this activity or that. And in this movement, we forget who and what we are.
John, what's your website? John Hidalgo. What's that website? People could, learn about your work and
the website is thejourneyback.net. The 2 books are East Meets West and Ancient Wisdom Can Enrich Your Life Today, and they're both available on Amazon.
I met this guy. Please, Lisa.
What did you say, Lisa?
I just wanted to mention real quick to look for John's article in the upcoming Om Times magazine in, I believe, July. And
July.
Also, yes, and they, that you're retreats will soon be being posted, and the workshops. So if people want to, maybe find somebody that irritates them that can spiritually move them forward. Sure. I always seem to find them, when I go to workshops. So I appreciate those wise words. I took them very much to heart, John. Thank you very much. Makes me look forward to the next one. Absolutely. And again, it's thejourneyback.net.
Yes, the analogy is if you set out on an adventure, say to climb a mountain, what you pack and take with you, you're not packing a lot of things that make you comfortable. It's not about comfort. It's about survival and growth and development. So we begin to, from our backpack, shed the things that may be pleasant but may not be particularly useful.
Thank you, guys. I want to thank John, Adago, Lisa LaRose, and you for your listening, for your feedback. And also, I just honor and treasure my relationship with Chris on Home Times Radio for the Vibrant Living Network. I'm Glenn Brooks. Your life is precious. Enjoy it. We'll be with you next week and beyond. Oh, check out my new recording with Dr. Saul Prester. It will actually stretch your mind around dentistry and a whole nother approach. You'll love it. Dr. Saul Prester. Look for that on my website, VibrantLivingNetwork.com. Thank you deeply